what preceded every single one of those civil rights bills in 64, 65, and 68 were actually race riots. 68, you were coming off of 1967, the Kerner Commission report. Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here, also dealt with that whole issue. All those riots were preceded by police brutality. And so one of the issues that they were protesting was exactly what NFL players are protesting, police brutality.
I think that it would be a bit disingenuous to say that John Carlos and Tommy Smith were protesting police brutality. I'm sure that was quite possibly part of it, but...
No, not possibly. That was one of the issues.
I would say that, at that time, segregation was still in full effect. There were still laws, I think, in effect that discriminated against us. Sure. As it relates to police brutality in 2018, Roland, the government is highly motivated to try to prevent police brutality.
Which government?
The American government.
But which one? Yeah, city, county.
They're all, because we're in a capitalistic society. When these deaths happen, there are government payout. The taxpayers get taxed. There's $1 million settlements, things like that. The government has great enthusiasm to stop police brutality because it costs money.
But they don't.
Let me finish. The government is very enthusiastic about incarceration. What the government wants is to politely take people to jail and prisons. That's a money-making venture. The government has no interest in a handful, 20, 100, 200. They don't have an interest in 200 or 300 people getting killed by the police. It's a money loser for them.
Right, but if you have New York, if you have the city of New York, where they spent nearly $500 million in settlements over a decade.
Right.
You look at the same thing in Chicago. The reality is those things are continuing. You look at what happened there's a city in Michigan. You get a police officer who pulled a black man over, planted drugs on him, beat him, had to raise taxes to pay the settlement. The reality is you're still seeing the payouts. You're still seeing the settlements, multi-million-dollar settlements.
I get it, but Roland, there's no job where people operate in perfection. There's just no job. And police have a very difficult job. They're underpaid, they're undertrained. We're in the most armed society, perhaps in the history of the planet and the world. Anytime you have a society this armed, there are going to be mistakes made. And again, do we overlook them? No, I'm not saying overlook them. But to sit here and pretend like, because it's popular over Twitter, that there's an epidemic of police killing African Americans or just Americans in general, it's just not true.
Well, it has nothing to do with Twitter. The reality is this here. First of all, I don't say somebody being shot and killed is somebody not being perfect or a mistake. That's death. No one can return from death. I would surmise.
Roland, I can't get into it's disingenuous to get into some emotional conversation or illogical conversation.
It's not emotional.
Again, you're running around with buzzwords. I'm talking about this conversation of trying to pretend like the police and the government have any interest in any citizen getting killed. They don't. They're highly motivated because of their real plan is mass incarceration. It's not killing people in the streets. It's such a small number, and I get it. But in this society where gun violence is this prevalent, there are going to be mistakes made by the police. Just like
there's a difference between mistakes being made and when you have. First of all, I've covered city government.
Gotcha.
I've covered county government.
Gotcha.
I've actually been in the room when politicians were having to deal with these issues. The reality is this: when you have cases, numerous cases, not a handful, when you have numerous cases that, first of all, run the gamut. The city of Cleveland is on their second consent decree in a decade. When you look at when Mitch Landry became mayor of New Orleans, he called in the Department of Justice to look at that police department that had decades of corruption. Ramsey was the police chief in Philadelphia. He called in DOJ. Same thing. We know, of course, the history of Los Angeles and the history in New York. And so this is not just a matter, I believe, of players protesting just in case of somebody being shot and killed. It's also those folks who are being beaten. When you have Chicago cops, in the case of Laquan McDonald, who, first of all, lied, flat out lied. Then you had cops who went to the Burger King where they had surveillance video and erased the video. They actually erased the video. Then they all lied and covered for each other. And then there are multiple cases in Chicago. John Burge, who just died, of course, beaten, tortured upwards of 40 black men. That's not mistakes. That is culture.
Do the police have a culture of excessive force? Perhaps they do, and probably they do. Is our government highly motivated to try to prevent it? Absolutely they are.
So why does it continue?
Because we're not in a perfect society. People make mistakes. They hire the wrong people. It's hard to have a perfect culture. There's no job. It's like a doctor. Doctors make mistakes all the time. People driving cars make mistakes and kill people. People shoot and kill each other because they're making mistakes. They get too emotional. They're too filled with hatred, whatever. Human beings are flawed and they make mistakes. And so, Roland, I get it. A lot of this stuff plays great on Twitter.
No,
but for me,
nothing to do with Twitter.
But for me, it's Twitter because I'm aware most black media people and most media people in general do everything to build their Twitter brand and protect their Twitter followers. That's where their passion comes from.
As someone who runs 3 black newspapers, before Twitter existed, this was an issue.
And as someone who has buried a family member because of police misconduct, someone very close to me and my family, I get the emotion when the police misconduct. I helped raise a relative who was killed by police. I get it. But the solution isn't this, we're going to monitor the police over Twitter or through Twitter and point out every example of what's going on with the police when they do wrong. That's not the solution.
So what's the solution?
The solution is we have to acknowledge the government is already motivated to prevent police violence and police misconduct because it's a money loser and we're in a capitalistic society. The issue that we have here has been the over-criminalization of poor people, and mass incarceration is actually the problem. The hot-button issue that will get you on TV and build you a Twitter following is going to run around and micromanaging the police and pointing out everything that they do wrong. If they did that to me or you about things that we do wrong on our jobs, trust me, they can find examples time after time after time. This complete demonization of the police is inappropriate for us because we live in communities where we need the police. We need to recognize the police make very little money, get very little training. They're the common man. If you want to get upset with someone, get upset with the politicians and the government officials who have put laws in place to criminalize the behaviors that go on in our poor communities.
Why can't you do both?
Because we're not doing both.
No, actually, here's what's interesting. What's interesting is that, first of all, one of the reasons why we have seen a change in many of those laws is because...
A change in what laws?
Well, first and foremost, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you did not have a level of first body cameras you have now. That's first. Second of all, you also have not had the level of scrutiny of police departments to change practices as a result. One of the issues that you have is you have strong collective bargaining of contracts where you have police departments in terms of what they can and cannot do. When you look at Amber Geiger right now in Dallas, who, based upon that contract, did not have to speak for 3 days, did not have to actually say what happened. She could, for 3 days, she could not say anything, and then, according to their contracts, is allowed to present an affidavit that actually was written by a police department attorney.
Here's the reality of facts. Having been black for 51 years, having my father doing business in the black community my entire life, having grown up in the black community, Roland, we can focus on the, let's say, 100 mistakes that police make every year.
It's more than 100 days.
But we know what is going on in our communities and where our children, who are killing our children. And so we can spend all this time focused on let's demonize the police, let's criticize the police.
You keep saying demonize the police, but Jason, if somebody gets killed, and if you have, in Chicago, for instance, there's a judge.
I don't care who's doing the killing.
No, one second. There's a judge in Chicago, for example. There's a judge in Chicago who saw 8 cops lie on his witness stand. He reports them to a police accountability board. Nothing is done. This judge comes back and says, they are lying. They're flat out lying. He said, if you're going to be protecting serve, and you have a badge and you have a gun, he said, but to sit here and actually lie on the witness stand, I would think, if we're about justice, we would say, you know what? We don't need cops who lie. We don't need cops who make stuff up. But that's just one issue. Here's what I see.
We also don't need journalists who take an issue that we're having in the black community, gun violence, and the death of our young people. And for black men 18 to 24, our leading cause of death is homicide. We don't need journalists who say, no, let's focus on this smaller issue that's damaging young black men and ignore this issue and have all the conversation. You're doing it right now. And have all the conversation about this issue and all the athletes taking a knee about this issue instead of us as black people saying, hold on, we have some issues in our community, there's some things we can do, and there's some things we can ask the government to do. And again, the government is already highly motivated to prevent police brutality. They're not highly motivated to fix a corrupt criminal justice system that over-criminalizes our behavior and has us dealing with mass incarceration. And so, Roland, what I'm going to say, Roland, is primarily, and what I do for a living is mostly talk about sports. I'm not an expert on the police. I think athletes have gone too far with the virtue signaling and taking a knee. It's an approach that hasn't contributed to anything but a discussion about the national anthem. And so I get it's great for your show and your Twitter following to get a sports writer knee deep in a conversation about the police. I'm primarily a sports writer. I can talk about athletes and things like that. I can sit here if I wanted to all day, but it's a distraction, and I'm not going to.
Well, here's the piece up. First and foremost, there are multiple issues that I want to bring up.
Right.
I brought that one up specifically because I know for a fact, when I was looking at what took place 50 years ago in those protests, and that was indeed one of the primary issues.
Those athletes created a conversation about the mistreatment of African Americans in 1968. The athletes right now are not creating a conversation about the mistreatment of African Americans right now. They're creating a conversation about the appropriateness of protesting during the national anthem. That's what the conversation has been for the last 3 years.
I think there's a difference between what the athletes were protesting and what their issues were, and then what other people wanted to focus on. And I've seen that even in politics. I've seen it where folks want to pivot, where they don't want to talk about that, but they want to make it about the anthem.
And so those athletes and Martin Luther King and the people of that generation were far more strategic about getting people to talk about what they actually wanted them to talk about. These athletes have not acted in a strategic fashion. Colin Kaepernick hasn't, and he created a conversation about the national anthem, which is a waste of time. And that's the difference between Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who at that time were being mentored by Dr. Harry Edwards, and that's why their approach was more strategic and more effective, rather than Colin Kaepernick and these athletes just freelancing and creating a conversation about the national anthem.
So do you completely dismiss the things that Colin Kaepernick has done in terms of the workshops, in terms of the sessions that he has been holding?
I don't dismiss them, but I think...
But actually they don't exist.
I didn't. Let me answer the question. I think they've mostly been a PR move by Colin Kaepernick after getting run out of the NFL, and he's involved in a fight against the NFL. I think most of it is a PR move. I can't diss it. It's helped.
So you said most of it is PR move. Question. Have you talked to Colin Kaepernick?
I've been to the press conferences. No, I haven't talked to Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick doesn't talk.
No. First of all, he does talk. But, I mean, everybody he talks to, I talk to him.
Well, great. He doesn't come out. Muhammad Ali and all these people y'all analogizing to wasn't afraid to come out and deal with their critics and back up their point of view with their own mouth and words, not speaking with people in private, not tweeting out this or that, not hiding behind a bunch of groupies in the media that think Colin Kaepernick is something special.
But Colin Kaepernick has spoken. Colin Kaepernick has done so, but
not in a real way.
But again, but first of all, you say he hasn't, and then you say not in a real way. But so we say a real way. So what do you want Colin Kaepernick to do? What do you?
If I want to take that bold of a stance, I would do what I'm doing right now. Coming out and someone that's a critic of mine and sit down with him and address the issue.
But there are folks who have different approaches, and I've seen this across the board. I've seen it.
You got every excuse for this dude.
No. I'm not.
One of the most polarized.
I'm not offering an excuse.
And
I'm saying
and he's afraid to back it up.
As somebody who's been on the news side, who's been on the culture side, somebody who's dealt with folks. You talk about what your job is, okay? That's what your lane is. I have dealt with a number of people who have said, you know what? There's some people who are out front. There are other people who are not. There are some people who choose to speak in certain venues a certain way, others who don't. So everybody has their own way of communicating. And so you can say, well, I want him to do more. Okay, I got you. Okay, but that's what he has chosen to do. But when we look at the value in terms of creating conversations, I do believe that this thing goes beyond just in terms of the protest and just them kneeling, which first of all was to bring attention to the issue. Other folk with other agendas still don't want to deal with that because they want to say that's irrelevant. They want to put this whole thing into a flag and say, oh, it's about disrespecting America. You also have players who are involved in politics. You have a LeBron James, okay, when it comes to education, when it comes to his taking a stance. You have presented LeBron James even coming to Los Angeles as basically doing the bidding of white liberals. So I don't understand.
I said it's a Hollywood move.
Okay, but why can't we look at what LeBron is doing beyond basketball and realize that if we say we want athletes doing this, and he's doing it, but now he's doing the bidding of white liberals?
Roland, you're talking about what you and others want athletes to do, this, and this.
But you do.
No. You can't speak for me, Roland. Let me
but
speak
you
for
said
myself.
what you want athletes to do.
What have I said?
You said that you want athletes to put their money together and be able to create business and build institutions in black communities. But you've also called them stupid and dumb for protesting. And it's like, well, they're stupid and dumb. Are they stupid and dumb? Put their money together.
Roland, I've done some stupid and dumb things in my life. And so when people have pointed out that I'm that's stupid and dumb, I've done stupid and dumb things. That doesn't make me a dumb person. And so I'm a critic. That's my job. I'm a journalist. I'm not a groupie. I'm not here to be best friends with every athlete in the world. I don't care to DM them and hang out with them at parties. I'm a critic. That's my job. And so sometimes I criticize LeBron. Sometimes I praise LeBron. I love what he's done with the school. I would like for athletes to take their money and resources and use them to support the causes they believe in. Because that's what millionaires and billionaires do. Instead of electing themselves as the leaders and the intellectual thought leaders. I'm not with that. I don't know.
Which athletes have elected themselves as intellectual thought leaders? Who?
Malcolm Jenkins, a lot of these athletes you just praised, because what I'm telling you, what millionaires and billionaires do, celebrities and things like that, they're not equipped to be the intellectual thought leaders. And so they should take their money, like other white millionaires and billionaires do, and invest in people who are actually dedicated to this, not people that have been dedicated to developing themselves as athletes.
But they're not positioning themselves as intellectual thought leaders. What they're doing is they're saying is, as an athlete, if I want to speak on these issues, and many of them say, coming from those communities, many of them say, still dealing with those issues. Now, how is it all of a sudden they're intellectual thought leaders? They are. If they're saying
a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. Roland.
But Jay says a lot of people say you know what you're talking about.
I got it, and they're more than welcome to that opinion. I'm not going to demonize them as racist. I'm not going to demonize them as sellouts. They can have that opinion. But what I'm talking about with athletes who have turned into millionaire celebrities, they're not John Carlos and Tommy Smith. They're not Muhammad Ali. This is not the 1960s. Muhammad Ali was connected to a black empowerment religious sect controlled by Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X.
Yes.
He was connected to something real. That has been our tradition, connected to the church. This stuff I'm seeing from athletes, there's no connection to the church. There's no spiritual foundation to it. There's nothing.
But here's the piece.
I see athletes doing way too much. They're not connected. Just like John Carlos and Tommy Smith were connected to Harry Edwards. He was a part of that. I don't see that same connection. I see athletes freelancing and standing on the basis of Twitter and guys like you that gas them up and can do no wrong. I'm not with that.
Well, first of all, let's do a couple of corrections. One, when you say can do no wrong, you're wrong. Okay, because as somebody who's actually sat on these panels, as somebody who's actually... One second. As someone who's actually had conversations, There's a difference between sitting on television and opining, and you don't even talk to the guys. But there's a difference when you actually get out from behind the desk and be a journalist and go actually talk to them where they are. I've actually had the conversations with Jenkins, with Ben Watson, with Bennett, with Colin Kaepernick. And so my perspective in terms of what they're doing is totally different because, frankly, you haven't.
I have talked to Malcolm Jenkins.
So here's the piece. So you talk to Malcolm Jenkins.
You just said I haven't.
If you talk to Malcolm Jenkins,
I have.
So how would you say that he doesn't know about these issues when in Philadelphia they made the attempt and brought juvenile justice leaders and brought others to the table to meet with Lurie, to meet with Goodell. They actually went out in the community to do that. They've done that.
Again, and this is where I'm saying the athletes are wrong. Because I don't want the athletes getting meetings with Roger Goodell and the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles to move into a lane they're not qualified for. There are actual people, politicians, community organizers, real people, not just celebrities and names, Roger Goodell, Jeffrey Lurie, blah. There's actually real people who have expertise in these issues. And so, again, I've talked to Malcolm Jenkins rather extensively here in LA when he came out to do our show, sat in my dressing room for 30, 45 minutes, and we went at it. And I think his intentions are good. I think some of what he's doing is misguided because he's trying to do too much. And so for those of you that think it's great that he got the owner and Roger Goodell to meet with somebody about criminal justice reform, I'm not impressed because that's not Roger Goodell's area of expertise or Jeffrey Lurie.
But if this isn't your area of expertise, aren't you operating out of your lane?
No, my area of expertise is in commenting on athletes.
I'm
commenting on Malcolm Jenkins.
No, but you're also commenting on these other issues that have to do with sports. And you're basically saying
because the athletes are involved in it, Roland. I gotta talk about.
So if you say they're not smart enough, what if you're not smart enough?
Maybe true.
So why are you talking about it?
Because it's my job.
So how about this here? So
Roland, let me explain to you the difference. Malcolm Jenkins' job is to tackle people on the football field. My job is to talk about athletes and what they have going on. It's my job.
But if Malcolm Jenkins chooses to speak to issues beyond... No, well, hold on. So first of all, you have passions that go outside of your job. So for instance, for me, although I'm a journalist, education is one of the issues that I'm concerned about. I created School Choice as a Black Choice Initiative. Although that's not my job, that is still a passion, a concern of mine. And so just like
when
what I do...
When you involve yourself into it, but people in the media have the right to criticize it.
I understand that.
It's not an indication that they're doing something inappropriate or wrong. But they may just be doing their job, Roland.
But if a person is involved in those issues, and they are doing that, and first of all, what I appreciate that there are athletes, that there are entertainers who don't only say, yo, I'm only here to play ball. I appreciate individuals who say, I want to use my platform to go beyond just what's seen as just my job, and using their celebrity and using their influence to speak to those issues. I think the difference here is that we've gotten used to athletes having a nice and neat, foundation, give some books out, have a golf tournament, and sign some jerseys. But when all of a sudden you got some guys who want to go deeper, then it's like, oh, no, y'all not smart enough for that. And what I'm saying is, I'm encouraged by that because hopefully other folks who are athletes will realize that you might have a job, but you can care more about your life than just your job. You can care about your community.
I think there's a lot of people that care about their community and express their care in different ways.
Which is true.
And so I think there's more than one way to express your care for your community. And so I just happen to believe what Jim Brown believes. And Jim Brown is an athlete that I think did it right. He played his football career, and then he got out of football and involved himself in activities in his community and giving back to his community and trying to be a leader in his community after he was done playing football.
Well, after he was done, he chose to become a Hollywood star. But he was also involved in those issues before. But let me ask you this question.
I get it.
No, but he was.
Roland, I get it. But Jim Brown's AmeriCAN program and involvement here in the LA community is something that I think should be a role model for a lot of athletes.
And I appreciate.
So Jim Brown has been quite clear. Again, when you're playing in the modern NFL, NBA, with all these corporate ties tied to you, and all these billion-dollar corporations tied to you, you can't just run out willy-nilly and be an authentic civil rights leader or leader in these political issues because you have too many corporate puppet strings attached to you.
But first,
so those are just the facts of the modern athlete that are different from the athletes of the past.
Well, first of all, the athletes of the past. First of all, many athletes of the past couldn't do a lot of these things anyway because they didn't have the financial wherewithal to actually do it. What you do have is
financial wherewithal. There are things called golden handcuffs. That's actually what prevents you, and that's again why Muhammad Ali in boxing, an individual sport, he was the draw, and because of his connection to the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, he was far more effective than these guys that are out here trying to mimic him now with Nike corporate strings attached to it.
I think
it's a joke.
I think one thing is we talk about guys mimicking. I think they're operating and standing in their own because that's two totally different deals. But I do want to ask you about this. I thought this was interesting. When LeBron James talked about the N-word being sprayed on his home. And you said that he had fallen into the far left trap of this value embracing victimhood.
Yes.
But then you said racism is an issue in America that though it's primarily an issue for the poor. It's not LeBron James' issue. He's removed himself from the damages and the ravages of real racism. So are you saying that if you're black and you have money, that you don't encounter racism, that you don't deal with it?
No, I think you encounter it. But when you're at LeBron James level, or hell, even mine, and I'm playing it light years away from LeBron James, it doesn't do real damage. And so let's take LeBron James. He was spray painted on his garage. That's a racist act. That the N-word was spray painted on his gate. Did it do any damage to him? He wasn't here. It was removed before the police even got here. There was no damage done. And so we've reduced racism to whatever little hurt feelings or someone said this or that. Racism is actually something real that damages people. And so when you become the kind of wealth that LeBron James has, and you become an elite, it's damn near like O.J. Simpson and what he got away with. He's an elite. He's super wealthy. But the ravages of racism don't touch him in the same way as it does the poor people.
Well, obviously.
And so his comments analogizing himself to Emmett Till's mother were preposterous and ridiculous, and anybody with a brain knows it.
But actually, when you talk about the idea of racism,
I'm not talking about the idea. I'm talking about the damages of racism.
We're
trying to take the damages out of it.
No, actually, we're not.
Someone said
actually, we're not. What we're doing is showing actually the gamut of it. So, for instance, when a George Wilborn, brother, comedian, done relatively well. When George Wilborn is trying to buy a home in a suburb of Chicago, and then when the owner finds out that he's black, and then George Wilborn, all of a sudden the house gets pulled off. George Wilborn has to sue as a result. George Wilborn encounters racism when it comes to housing. There were Los Angeles Chargers who said when they actually moved from San Diego, who faced housing discrimination when they were looking to buy a home. Oh, they got money. They were facing housing discrimination. Robert Smith, richest black man in America, worth $2.7 billion, has talked about the numerous times he gets pulled over by the cops in his very expensive car, going to wait. His private jet is waiting on him because they're not looking at a guy who's got $2.7 billion. They're seeing a black man driving a nice car. The reality is that I don't care what your station is. Bob Johnson, just the other day, because what he just dealt with. You can have money in America, and you can still deal with racism. The issue, though, is why should we have to say, well, yours is real and mine is not really real?
We don't have to, but we don't have to pretend like LeBron James getting something spray painted on his $20 million mansion in Brentwood is in any way equivalent to what happened to Emmett Till and Jim Holland. He said it, and it was ridiculous.
Well, first of all, we say equivalent. I'm not saying, first of all, you're right. It's not equivalent, but
it's not even in the same planet. Roland, so the damn N-word was removed from his gate before he even saw it, before the police could even get there. It did nothing to him.
But we have reality, Jason, of folks who are black in this country who work in places where opportunities are not even being afforded to them. And somebody might say, oh, but you have a nice life. And this black person over here...
No, this isn't about having a nice life. This is about whether it did any real damage to LeBron James.
No. First of all, I'm going beyond just the N-word in LeBron James. I'm going
to damages.
No.
Racism actually damages you.
Yes.
It doesn't inconvenience you.
And
Damages you.
And what I'm saying is this. To be black in this country, we want the same thing white folks have. And that is to be able to drive, to shop, to go to work, and not have somebody do something to us that is racially motivated. And what I'm saying is, the reality, even in 2018, is you might have a lot of money, you still you may have to encounter the reality of racism in America.
And so, if there's any white people watching, what they would argue is, you think nothing ever happens to me bad on the job? Nothing racially motivated ever happens to me on my job? There are white people that would, and again, may not be at the same rate, may not be at the same...
Not even close. Not even close.
Oh, who knows? I can't speak for white people.
Actually, if you go to the EEOC, you can do that. Because that's where typically the claims are made.
I get it. There's some people make claims, some people don't. Roland. Some people just, that was an inconvenience, or that was some BS that I dealt with, and move on. I can't speak for white people. But what I can say is racism and what we should be fighting against is the racism that does real damage, because it is there. I get for Twitter and for the media and what will get you on TV. You sit around and can act like LeBron James having the N-word spray paint. Oh my God, this is almost.
So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Because you keep saying real damages. Yeah. Do you believe that it is real damages when you have African Americans who are locked out of Wall Street?
Yeah, that's real damage.
Do you believe that when you have African Americans who are of wealth, when they're trying to create hedge funds to be able to invest in them? Okay. And then also, is it a real damage when you're an African American and you apply for a job and somebody says, oh, we don't like the style of your hair, so therefore you can't. Gotcha. And so, here's what I think the value of having that conversation, which goes beyond just the N-word on a game. There are people who actually believe, oh, no. And I'm not talking about LeBron James money. I'm talking about the people who say, oh, no. You don't deal with those things. You don't see those things. There are African Americans.
So here's my problem, Roland. What happened to LeBron James doesn't convince those people that these real things actually happen. What it makes them do is say, like, oh, that's some whiny BS. That's what they do. Instead, and so it makes it easier to ignore.
Actually, I think you're wrong, because when you have instances where African Americans who are well known, who have had to encounter the reality of race, other people have said, "Wait a minute, hold up. If it can happen to them,
No, they don't. See, because Roland, this is the problem.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I don't think that's what they do. No, because again, Roland, you believe in trickle down social justice. Just like Ronald Reagan believed in
actually, you're wrong.
I deal with too many black media people.
You're wrong.
And somehow, if we treat LeBron and Serena better, it's going to trickle down.
No.
And the people at the bottom are going to be treated better.
You are absolutely wrong. So to say that this is what you did, you are 100% wrong. I don't believe in trickle down. Ella Baker, one of the greatest organizers, believed not pulpit to pew.
Why are we spending so much time talking about LeBron James and something that got spray painted on his gate?
So here's what's interesting. So
that's trickled down. LeBron James wasn't damaged. It doesn't prove anything.
First of all,
other than there's an idiot in his neighborhood. We don't even know if it was a black or white person.
Here's the piece.
We don't even know if it really even happened.
But here's the piece. Here's the piece. You want to limit this to solely LeBron James and the gate. Listen. I lay out for you other examples of well-to-do African Americans who have had to deal with the reality of race. I'm trying to actually have a broader conversation beyond the gate. And what I'm trying to say is not trickle down. What I'm trying to say is that you have individuals. It's not a question of, well, your wealth is this, so therefore you really don't experience that.
One second.
One second.
It gets pulled over.
First of all, his name is Robert Smith. No. Here's what I'm.
This isn't the great mass.
Jason. Here's what I am saying. What I'm saying is when Dr. King said we are here to redeem the soul of America, when Dr. King said we are here to make America be the nation it is on paper, not the nation it is in reality. What I am saying that black folks would want is whether you are a LeBron James, or whether you are a middle-class teacher, or whether you are a brother and sister who live in public housing, or a single mother or two-parent household, then you know what? We would like to go through this society and not have to deal with the issue of race. What I looked at, what LeBron was saying is that this is what happened to me.
You just said you're moving away from LeBron, but you just brought it back. No,
you just brought it back. No, because I said.
But you told me not to talk about LeBron.
No. I'm expanding on the point, and that is when we look at the issues of race, whether you are an athlete or an entertainer, or whether you're somebody who is on Wall Street or Main Street or MLK Street, the reality is you're still black in America, and you're still dealing with the indignities of race. What I would hope people would get out of that example of LeBron is that it's not just, I didn't realize that somebody like him, because, matter of fact, I don't even see him as black. I just sort of see him as sort of something else.
I think what you see is something that happens in a fantasy Twitter world that just doesn't happen.
Hold on, here's my deal.
Because this is what's going on. Because, again, you have some fantasy about how America works.
No, I don't.
That's not how it works.
Jason, I have a reality, Jason.
They're not looking at LeBron James' spray-painted gate and going, oh, my God.
No, Jason, I have a reality. But
interesting.
You part of your argument always constantly, well, what happens on Twitter? First of all, there are numerous conversations and numerous things that happen that's not happening on Twitter.
You, like a lot of media people, are a slave to your Twitter feed.
How?
Hell, Roland, you've tweeted like 200,000 times.
Okay.
Everything.
Do you know what?
Are slaves to their Twitter feed.
No. First, it's not
a platform for us.
First of all, it's not a slave to it. What it is a communications medium. Okay. Now, as somebody again who's actually run 3 black newspapers, who's been news editor of a black magazine, who's run a black website, who understands how to communicate with folks, it is a medium. So you operate in this, well, you're a slave to it. No, I understand what it is. If you have the capacity, let's also, if you really want to expand this, when you're African American who's run a black newspaper and you might have a circulation of 20,000, but yes, you built a following, you could actually reach more people on such a platform, and it goes beyond just your traditional following. So that's not a slave, that's knowing how to use it.
Roland, and several times you've thrown out your credentials as a journalist. And
but you say I'm a journalist, but go ahead.
I've said I'm a journalist. I haven't tried to be condescending about my journalism.
No, it's not condescending.
No, Roland, you're acting as if somehow your journalistic experience somehow supersedes mine. And I'm
not acting like that.
That's preposterous. But trust me, I understand journalism. And I understand what's going on right now with journalism. The entire media is addicted to Twitter. And Twitter,
are you?
Absolutely not. Again, am I on it? Do I use it? Absolutely. But I know exactly what it is.
So Jason, all other media, everybody else is addicted.
They haven't figured it out.
Everybody else is addicted to Twitter, but you, I'm not.
No.
I'm in class with myself.
No. I understand what Twitter is doing to us and what it's doing to America and what it's doing to the journalism profession. It's turned everything into clickbait. You can't have real discussions. That's why we spend so much time talking about what got spray painted on LeBron James's fence rather than the crisis we have within our community our family. Let me finish, Roland. I get the whole thing of cutting me off anytime I get to a point. Rather than dealing with the crisis that's going on in our families in black America, we're spending time worried about a $20 million mansion that may or may not have had the N-word spray painted on it, and somehow this is some great example. But we have a complete collapse of the black family that we won't talk about. We have a complete disconnect from God and just based in this secular world, and that's what Twitter is, and we're all addicted to it, and it's taking us further and further into the secular world, away from God and away from the path that has served us best here in America.
And this is the mistake you keep making. You keep saying, we got to have a conversation, and we got to have it in depth. You act as if, we can't talk about that, as if we won't cover anything else. Really, as we can. See, the whole point of this is not to have.
What are we talking about right now?
One second,
What are we
hold
talking
on.
about right now?
If you're gonna ask me not to interrupt you, don't interrupt me.
What are we talking about right now?
If you're gonna ask me, don't interrupt you, don't interrupt me.
What are we talking about?
Like I
right
said,
now?
so let me finish my
kinds of
point.
BS.
Let me finish my point, okay? But so you don't interrupt, because if you want me not to interrupt you,
Go ahead.
do the same. The reality is, we can have an in-depth conversation. You talk about all these things, but then when you get challenged on it, ooh, why are we talking about it? The reality is this here. What we are looking at right now.
Roland,
Hold on, one second.
You're
Hold
here at
on.
my house,
You're
in my
interrupting. Hold on,
apartment.
but Jason.
I'm not running from anything.
Jason, you're interrupting again. Allow me to finish.
I'm not running.
Jason,
from
allow me to
anything,
finish.
bro.
Jason, allow me to finish. No, you said, oh, why are we talking about this here? Why are we discussing this here? Why are we discussing these things here? Because those are things that you've discussed. Those are things that you discussed numerous times. If you don't think that the protesting and the Colin Kaepernick and that's what you do about nothing, why do you keep talking about it?
Because Roland.
In fact, your Twitter feed, you Twitter, you've been complaining when he got the award from Harvard. You send multiple tweets. If there's no big deal, if everybody else is a slave to it.
Multiple tweets about what?
When Colin Kaepernick got the award, the D.B. Du Bois Award from Harvard.
I said something about him not streaming.
You posted about three or four different tweets. And so
they said what?
It
Tell
was
me what they
interesting.
said.
Okay, I'll pull them up. But what I thought
because
what I think is interesting is, if none of these things matter, why do you keep talking about it?
Because Roland, as I've explained to you, my job is to talk about what's going on in sports and who's making news in the sports world. My job dictates that I talk about Colin Kaepernick. His protest was one of the biggest deals in the history of sports. It changed the conversation about the NFL. It's my job.
But if you're saying, what's no big deal, why we talk about it? So let me ask you this question.
I have a job, man.
Well, first of all, we all have jobs, but there are a number of things that we can also talk about, and we can actually say, you know what, I don't think that's really important. I can talk about this in sports. I mean, we can actually do that.
I have a job that's tied to television ratings and connected to what the massive audience wants me to talk about. I can't just talk about what I want to talk about. I have a job. I have bosses.
So what you're saying is that you talk about these things because it's also part of the ratings game.
It's part of my job.
Right, but then you complain.
I'm in television. Yes, ratings are a part of television, Roland.
Okay, but you just complained and whined about people using Twitter for clickbait, which is the same as ratings. It's the exact same thing. Yes.
Roland.
You said, this is what you said. Too many people in the media are concerned about clickbait. That's what you said by Twitter. Dude, that's the exact same as you saying that's about ratings.
140 characters. 280 character reduced, dumbed down conversation that makes everybody have a dumbed down.
Well, actually, you can now see in tweets. You can actually send about 10 or 12 consecutively, so it's more than 280. But
it makes everybody have a dumbed down, divisive conversation.
This is where I think Franklin being a hypocrite. You just said it's about ratings. I got to talk about it.
Part of my job is to talk about sports and certainly to drive television ratings.
Which is clickbait. And if somebody else's job is to utilize Twitter for the same thing, but you say they're bad, but you're good. But let me ask you this question.
Twitter's a very dishonest platform. It's controlled by people in Silicon Valley.
Well, guess what? Somebody sitting right there would say your platform on my 20th Century Fox is also controlled by somebody else and not controlled by you.
No question about it.
So there you go. We're 18 days away from an election. You said before, you don't vote.
I don't.
Why?
Because I've never trusted a politician a day in my life. I don't believe in politics. I'm not a person that really believes in compromise. And politics is mostly about compromise. I'm not good at that.
So how do you change?
I don't trust.
Nobody?
Not in politics, no. I think it's a very dishonest profession.
So all of them?
Pretty much, yeah.
So when you think about it historically, when you look at the city of Atlanta, where in 1973, 0.0012% of all contracts, and Maynard Jackson runs. And Maynard Jackson, by virtue of being the mayor of Atlanta, literally changes the course of history for African Americans. He used it through politics. He used the two terms as mayor to change. Coleman Young in Detroit, Mary Berry in D.C.
I don't believe in politics. I really don't.
So the issues you often talk about, how do you actually think politics has no role in that?
Excuse me?
The issue that you talk about, say we should be discussing or dealing with.
I'm talking about me. Now, I'm not giving you the advice, hey, you got to follow and believe what Jason Whitlock believes. I'm not advising anyone that. We're talking about me. And there's certain things unique in my personality.
But if you don't vote, aren't you part of the problem?
If you might argue that.
No, I'm asking. Because
you might. I don't believe that. No.
So of the things that are happening in our world, any number of issues, if politics is involved in it, well then, how can we change something for the good if we don't vote for someone who we think will be able to make changes?
Because I think politics, the way it's constructed now, is always going to let you down. I think that there's so much dishonesty and corruption in politics that I just don't personally involve myself in it. What I believe in, what's best for us as African Americans, is an allegiance to God. I believe that is our salvation.
An allegiance to God.
Far more than politics.
You do know politics also deals with God.
We have replaced religion with politics. We have an addiction to politics right now. We as black people, we talk about politics from Obama to Trump the way we used to talk about God, and I think it's inappropriate. It's our constant, everyday conversation. This is part of my problems why I can't stand Twitter and social media. There's a disconnect. It's one of the most secular places you can actually be. I think if you go look at the Asian American community that has had a lot of success here in America, it's not through politics. It's through an allegiance to themselves and taking care of themselves. That's why I think we've lost course as African Americans.
Have Asian Americans had the same history as black folks in America?
I don't think they've had the same history, but I think they've had issues in America, and I think they've addressed their issues by gathering up in their own communities, supporting each other, and supporting themselves, and they're not as heavily involved in politics. I think there was a time when we needed to be heavily involved in politics. There were laws on the books that prevented us from pursuing happiness and liberty and things in America. I think we went through that time in the 60s, 50s, 60s, maybe part of the 70s. Again, I'm not suggesting to the rest of Africa that you disassociate yourself from politics, but I think we've overdosed on it. And we think our solutions are political. I don't.
First of all, it's not solely political, and also, but it's a whole bunch of people who have lots of God, but also have no plan. The reality is here. We can show the timeline of the role that politics has played in actually making our community a better community, but not only making our community a better community, also making our lives in America better. To act as if somehow that's irrelevant is crazy. And
For me, I didn't say it was a suggestion for Roland.
So
this is my personal opinion.
So, what are let's say your top 3 issues? What are they?
For African Americans?
No, your top 3 issues. So, whether you want to be for black folks or everybody, what are the top 3 issues?
The number one issue I think facing the African American community is our breakdown in family, and I would couple that with our distancing ourselves from religion. I think those two things go hand in hand. Until we fix the black family and until we get right back with God, nothing good is going to happen for us.
But when you say get back with God, there are millions of black folks who are in church every Sunday, who are in Bible study. There are numerous
African Americans. As soon as they leave church and Bible study, they go straight to politics. They turn on cable TV, and they have an addiction to politics.
You do know we had religious leaders in the 50s and 60s who were also heavily involved in politics.
Did it? We had laws on the books in the 50s and 60s that drastically needed to be changed.
We still have laws on the books that actually were set during those times that still have to be changed. The Florida Restoration voting initiatives right now dates back to a law in the 1880s. The governor of Virginia, who won Terry McCullough when he wanted to extend voting rights to formerly incarcerated, all 13,000 at one time. The Republicans said, no, you have to do it individual. That dated back to a 1902 law where a lawmaker said on the floor, we are doing this to keep the darkies from voting. And so the reality is to act as if somehow politics does not still hurt us or we somehow can't interact with it.
Didn't say that.
So, but again, though, so
I said for me,
so
I don't involve myself in politics.
So
and
when you look at the
my
issues,
number one issues were.
Actually, for three. You said.
I really only have two.
You said the family and the black church.
Family and spirituality. We have disconnected from God, and it's a mistake.
Well, I would argue, especially as somebody who's a husband of a minister, and in terms of the folks who I also see, there's a significant number of us who are very much there with our religion, but I think there are a whole lot of us who also love to talk about what is happening in our society, and frankly, are sitting on their behinds and not voting when it can actually impact it. See, I know there are politicians who are good people. There are people who are there to do the right thing.
If you go study the history of the planet, if the family's not connected, nothing can grow from that. If the family's not together, nothing can grow from that. And so we can put all the laws we want on the books.
Yeah,
but if our families are in disarray and our children are being raised by grandmamas and aunties and cousins and things like that, nothing is going to happen. And as long as we are disconnected from God, nothing good will happen.
But here's what I also realize. There, a long time, for a whole lot of us, have been connected to God, have been praising and worshiping, and all of that. And we have still been broke. We have still been locked out. You can be the most holiest of holy person, and you can be on a job, and somebody can make a decision that, nah, you ain't getting promoted. You can sit here and lay hands and heal people all you want to, and you can still encounter that. What I am saying is, we can actually do both at the same time. And what I am looking at, when I talk about in terms of what is happening, I think if anybody who reads Dr. King's book, Chaos or Community, where do we go from here? What he laid out in that book, where he talked about the institutions that can play a critical role in saving black America. He said the black church, he said the black press, and he said the black professional organizations, which includes fraternities and sororities, because of their infrastructure. He dealt with religion, but even Dr. King understood, right in that book in 1967, that we can be as holy as possible, but there are still other aspects of our lives that we must contend with. And to act as if politics and community, you can even say save our community. My parents were founders of our civic club. That's still politics. Because who picks up trash and who cuts down overgrown lots and who tears down crack houses, that's politics.
To me, family and God and family are the foundation for
any
Jason. Healthy community, any healthy group.
So what do you do?
The foundation's no good. You can stack all the politics on top of what you want. It's going to collapse.
Okay, so what do you do then? So answer this question.
Yeah.
What do you do if you're that family and it's mama and dad and they are holy people? They love God and they serve God. But their kids still go to horrible schools. They also are living in areas where you don't have economic opportunities. They are a nuclear family, loving it together. But this is the inside of the house. This is the rest of the house. How do you deal with that?
I think
if politics doesn't matter.
I'm not saying I didn't say politics don't matter.
Okay, it's fine. So if you have this black family that's together, and they are loving each other, and then they're praising God, and they love God. But then when they step outside of their house, they're still dealing with an economic reality, and an education reality, and a social reality. Who changes that? How does that family?
Individual, I know many families like that. Most of my friends come from families like that, and I know how we made it and moved forward. And so again, if you come from, and I came from parents that were divorced, but I know where my grandmama had me, and I know where my mama had me, and I know what they planted in me. And so again, there will be obstacles in life, but if you really have a spirit-filled life and a God-filled life and the right kind of family support, you can overcome those obstacles right here in America.
But again, when you are dealing with all those realities outside of the home, there are folks who say, I still got to deal with that. I got to deal with it every day. Everybody does. Well, no, but again, but again, I think holistically is how we have to look at it. I think it's frankly naive to think that, well, if it's justice, this is coming from somebody. Parents who have married 51 years, okay, still together, 5 kids, 4 went to college, all of that. But we still are looking at what happens when we still are operating in this society that goes beyond our church, that goes beyond our family, and the stuff that we got to deal with. That's still there.
And Roland, I think life is full of challenges for all human beings. That's just the way that it is. Life is unfair. Life is hard. What do you do to limit the ability for racism or whatever the obstacles are to impact you moving forward?
How do you eliminate that? How do you eliminate that?
I think you. How did me?
No. How would
through education, through self-responsibility, through accountability for myself, to taking care of myself and not making irresponsible decisions that make it so when I face an obstacle, I'm able to overcome it.
So if it's education, yeah. And when we also look at the reality of the type of schools that our children are in, when we look at the inequities of those schools, not just big city, but also rural as well. Again, we can first of all, in the history of black folks, in 399 years black folks have been in America, we can say, oh, that person. But if you talk about a collective, we still have to accept the reality in terms of where we sit collectively in the United States. And if education is one of those areas, that's one where you damn right we better be involved in politics, because that plays a huge role in what schools get built, the amount of funding that goes to those schools,
so
to give us those opportunities.
Here's my position, Roland, is let's be involved in politics. But let's do it from a foundation of family and God. And then we can start making better decisions when we enter into making those decisions along politics. We have, to me, accepted some giveaways from the Democratic Party that have crippled our family.
Like what?
The whole welfare system, the whole system, to be quite honest with you, integration was a mistake, Roland. And the whole deal of, we're going to go out to these schools and have white teachers teach our kids, that was a mistake.
Actually,
we should have been fighting for the better financing for our schools and for black teachers and for us to take care of ourselves, rather than, let's go out to somebody else's neighborhood and have them take care of us. That's a mistake in my opinion.
Well, first of all, you obviously have not fully studied Brown versus Board of Education and Brown 2. Brown versus Board of Education and Brown 2 were about finances. The whole basis of that was the inequities. It wasn't just, I want to learn with some white kids. When Thurgood Marshall, when they
what
went
happened though?
No.
I don't care about what it was.
No, and that's where you're wrong.
We didn't all run into
No, we didn't all go into that. What happened, still happened, was you had black folks who were saying properly fund. You had people who were
saying, but that's not what we did.
No, you see, that's not what we did. You acted as if somehow we had this whole other institution that was there. What you still had was you had folks who were saying, okay, this is how we're actually going to move and make this thing possible. Here's what black people knew. Black people knew y'all got the money. Y'all got the resources. Now, all of a sudden, when it came to how our schools looked, the books that you were reading, the uniforms that you had, all those different things, it came down to money. The reason they were fighting Brown versus Board of Education was about money. The reason they fought integration or even kids sitting next to each other was about money. And the reason we still have inequities in education today is because of money. White parents moving out the suburbs saying, you know what, we want our money to stay in our neighborhoods. We don't care what y'all neighborhoods are like. That's about money. The entire education system is set up based upon property taxes. That's based upon money, which is based upon race and wealth.
Roland, money is not the solution for every problem.
Let me ask you a question.
Money is not
Are you in America?
It's not the solution for every problem.
With all the federal agencies that share along with the White House, which one shares along with the White House?
Which one shares a lawn?
Yes. There's only one federal agency where you can play flag football on a White House lawn.
I don't know who. What?
Treasury. You want to understand America? White House is power. Treasury is money. Power, money, money, power. Do you know what's right across the street from Treasury? Bank of America. Most are banking institutions. If you don't think America's about money, that's what America's about, money.
No, I didn't say America wasn't about money.
Well, we better have a money conversation.
I said money doesn't solve all problems. And as I explained to you earlier when we go back to the conversation, that's why I said, and you just said, money explains a lot of America. And that's when I say...
That's America.
Yeah. When police brutality is a money loser for the government, trust me, the government is interested in stopping police brutality.
You know what's going to stop that? I'm telling you what's going to stop police brutality.
Not money.
No, it is money. It is money. You know what's going to stop police brutality? When taxpayers don't have to pay the bill, when you can take a police officer's pension. Trust me, when a city no longer has to pay the legal fees of a cop, trust me, that cop is going to think twice before he beats somebody with a baton, because if that person goes, wait a minute, that's why...
The cop might also think twice before he enters a neighborhood or enters a dangerous situation.
No.
That may be the solution.
No, that cop, trust me, if that cop then goes, wait a minute, if I beat somebody...
They're doing it all over the country, Roland. You can look at the murder rate in Baltimore after the Freddie Gray riots. It's been going on all over the country.
And that was because those cops did not like the fact that somebody was holding them accountable. That's the problem.
And they started doing less policing.
Yeah, hold on. But wait a minute. So basically, they stopped doing their job. So what they basically were saying was, how dare you...
demonize people who don't make a
lot of money. That wasn't demonizing, Jason.
One of the hardest jobs in America.
Jason. So because cops got indicted, then all of a sudden
it's more than indicted, man.
No, it wasn't.
We sit on TV. I'm talking about what's going on with policemen. We sit
Jason.
on TV and act like police are some of the worst people on the planet.
Jason,
and it's just
in the city of Chicago, they withheld the Laquan McDonald tape for 4 years. They did not want the tape released. And then they lied.
Roland, I know you can go to point to
No, I'm showing you the example. The cops in Chicago...
I get it. They did something inappropriate. I get it.
No, not inappropriate.
Went to jail,
no, not inappropriate. Laquan McDonald is dead. And the cops lied. And
the cop went to prison.
And what the cops did was they said, how dare you indict one of ours? We're going to stop working. They don't want any accountability.
That's most people, Roland.
But these are people who have guns and badges.
I get it, Roland,
who can take your life.
People.
Dude.
That is they're human beings, Roland.
I know they're human beings.
Look, they raise their hand.
But guess what?
They don't want accountability.
There's a level of power that they have that you don't have.
I got it.
And you know what? What comes with that badge and that gun is a higher level of accountability. And damn it, they need to be held accountable. And it can't be, oh, you're demonizing. No. For the cops who do good, celebrate them. But the cops who do bad, you damn right go after them and not coddle them. And I'm not going to excuse it as it was a mistake or it was an accident.
Because I've actually dealt with the issue.
Well, when you say perfection,
personal life,
no
profession is preferred.
None is perfect. But there are few professions where you can shoot and kill somebody and get away with it. That's what it is. One of the questions I got to ask you about.
Almost ran out because I got
No. Just a couple more questions.
Are we at halftime yet? Is anybody?
6 minutes in the second quarter.
All right, go ahead.
Couple more questions. We look at what a number of athletes are doing. Grant Hill, things that he's involved in. Chris Webber, things that he's involved in. When I look at the Bennett brothers, I'm looking at athletes who are obviously totally different from previous generation of athletes because of the level of wealth that they have. I do believe that what we are seeing, and I don't believe they get the same level of attention. I think that we are seeing the athlete today, frankly, who is doing even more than a significant number of athletes who were in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, who are actually changing lives of people that frankly doesn't get the level of attention that it should get.
I'm sure that's true. They have far more wealth. They have far more opportunity to do more.
So do you believe, though, that you're in sports, do you believe that that's also part of the problem in that in this medium we don't offer a balanced perspective of the black athlete or what many of them are doing, where it's only, just a couple here, then a couple here, as opposed to the things that they're doing, opening of schools, what they're doing in terms of with scholarships, what they're doing in terms of the level of investment they're making, what so many of them doing in terms of literally rebuilding blocks and communities and the projects that they're involved in. Do you believe media could do a much better job of telling that story and not just focus on X's and O's?
Yeah, I think they could, and I think they probably do more of that now. But again, does it get traction? Is that what people want to read? Again, sometimes it's supply and demand. Demand dictates what the supply is. Again, I was involved with, the formation of the Undefeated. It was about telling a fuller story about the black athlete. And so, ESPN has a website with 40, 50 African-American journalists that's dedicated to telling the full story of African-Americans. I think they're trying to do it, so I can't say all of the media is ignoring it. I can't, it's a supply and demand issue, but, there's a website, The Undefeated, that's fully staffed, and the ESPN has dedicated a lot of money to, that I think is trying to tell a fuller story about the African-American athlete.
Speaking of that, that's your greatest failure?
Is that my greatest failure? No, I think it's one of my greatest succces, that the thing actually launched, and there's 40 to 50
but you didn't launch it, you were fired from it.
No, I got it. And so it happened. Because trust me, there were people trying to stop it from happening. And the whole issue with me, when I was at ESPN, it was about whether or not they were going to fully fund the issue. That's what the fight was over. Some people didn't want it to happen. I did, and I wanted it to be fully funded with a full staff, just like Grantland and other places. And I had that fight with them. They fired me, but they went ahead and launched the site, and they fully funded it. I won that argument.
So you don't think you don't think that if you had stayed there, they wouldn't have fully funded it? You think by firing you, that's what got it fully funded?
I think it played a role in it, absolutely, because there were people there that just absolutely didn't want the thing to happen, whether I was involved or not. And then there were extra people gassed up because they didn't want me involved. And so, again, in losing that fight, I think, or in having that fight, I think John Skipper at that time realized what was going on. Can't move forward with Whitlock. Going to get rid of him. But we are going to fully fund this thing. The guy is right.
Were the mistakes that you made that, looking back, you wish you had managed it better?
I wish I had managed it better. No, because I think I did the things necessary for the site to launch and for it to be fully funded and have a full staff. Are there small things along the way? It's a startup.
No, I got it.
It's a startup. All kinds of things happen. A wrong person got hired here or there. Small things that, yes, I could nitpick and whatever. But in my view, if you really understand the story and were there, I did the things necessary for the website to survive.
Ownership is a huge piece, and obviously in terms of the understanding, in terms of being able to control a narrative and tell the story. One of the things that I think is interesting is that when I look at a lot of the comments that folks make, and not just folks who make comments on social media, people who are in media, people who work with you, folks who used to work with you. And how does it make you feel when they put you in the same category essentially as Clarence Thomas as being a traitor to black people?
It's comical, but I can't control what people say over Twitter. All I can do is live my life. But, it's comical. But I say it's comical, but, Clarence Thomas is a Supreme Court justice. He's a successful person. So it's not the worst thing you could say about me. Clarence Thomas is very successful. He's on the Supreme Court. He has risen to a place of great prominence in American history. But in terms of selling out my race, that's a joke. That rolls off of me because there's just no truth to it.
Yeah, when you are engaged in these debates, when you've been called out by the likes of Martellus Wiley and some other people like that as well. We have Martellus. Marcellus. No, not Bennett. When you have these debates, what I'm curious about is that do you go, you know what? Here's my perspective. If I screwed that one up, I was wrong.
Give me the example.
No, I'm asking you. No, I'm asking you. Have you ever engaged in any of these debates and where you
Any of
say
these debates,
no,
give me an example.
I am speaking broadly. What I'm saying is, have you
Whose
ever
debates?
no any of them? Have you ever been engaged in any of these debates where you then reflected by saying, you know what, I shouldn't have said this about the athlete, or you know what, I was wrong.
Oh, you talking about this debates on my television show, or just any?
Well, I mean, I was not talking about television because that's where you are largely having these level of conversations
right.
that people are responding to.
Yeah, I think, my nickname in Kansas City was Jason Flip-Flop because I'll flip positions. I react to new information. And so, do I come up with the wrong opinions from time to time on athletes? Hell yeah. I spout opinions every day. And so, I have hey, you know what, I was wrong. I've come to this or that conclusion. I do it all the time.
And speaking of that, I did see when I was looking at the comments after the Harvard University and Colin Kaepernick. Why do you believe that what he is doing is because he's trying to find himself? What's the basis of that? What's the basis of that point of view?
Because I've seen many young people of mixed race who grow up in an environment outside the black community who have struggled with their identity. Everybody has. And anybody black that pretends like they haven't encountered that with young people is lying. And so, and again, some things I know about Colin Kaepernick that I will not share or whatever, but he shows all the classic signs.
Of what?
He grew up in a white community, raised by white parents, and he's black. That right there is a very complicated upbringing in America.
Okay.
And it's going to lead, first of all, whether you're mixed race or not, all young people have identity issues. All of them. And they go through a process of finding themselves. That's what the college experience in your early part of your life is generally all about. Colin Kaepernick's are more complicated because of America's racial issue and his upbringing and things like that. And so when I see a guy go from being the party guy that's all tatted up to voila, I lose my starting job, and now I'm baby Malcolm X or Angela Davis, and I got a black fist in the air, it rings as someone who's trying to find himself.
Or could it be somebody who, the reason I think that's important, because when you articulate that point of view, it should be actually based upon something or substance that's tied to that person. When you say all people, first of all, everybody's different. Okay,
everybody's different. Person goes through trying to find themselves.
Yes, and what I'm saying is that there are people out there who might be 18 or 19 or 20 who aren't having the same issues as somebody else who's 18, 19, or 20. But to say that about him, and then to say as if, well, it's that, and he's doing these things only because of his girlfriend, things along those lines, and you don't know. You're just throwing something out there. And I'm just wondering.
I know more than you think, Roland, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go chapter and verse. I'm not going to do some deep dive on Colin Kaepernick.
But why not? Because if you offer that perspective,
I don't think it's unfair.
But isn't
some of what I know I think is unfair.
But isn't it unfair for you to make that characterization if it's not based upon fact?
I do believe it's based on fact.
But if you believe it's based upon fact, but then you don't want to back it up,
I'm not going to share everything that I know or have been told about Colin Kaepernick. It's clear, Roland, I'm not out on some shaky territory looking at this guy. Everybody I know black has seen someone like Colin Kaepernick.
Okay,
That's just a fact. Mixed race kid, raised in the suburbs. I've seen it on my Ball State football team with all these different recruits and guys that come in that don't come from the city, don't have some strong black connection. There's an identity issue that people work through early on in their life. He, in my opinion, is still working through those issues. I don't say that.
So what if,
I don't say that maliciously or derisively. He's a typical young person.
But Jason, it comes off as malicious.
It does. It comes off as just like this is a fact of life. But that's
not how it comes.
An overweight person.
But that's not how it comes
off.
Some
sort of issue that causes them to overeat.
But that's not how.
That's not a malicious statement about overweight.
So you're not concerned about how it comes off because when people hear that, When people hear that, when people hear you associate who he is and what he has done, and then you throw in his girlfriend, you give this impression as if this guy, he's being led by other people, as if he hasn't come to that conclusion himself, and you give this perspective as, he's just this confused brother, and then with the baby Malcolm X, and then,
but it's happened to me, happened to most everybody I know. Every person I know goes through some kind of confused state or different state while they're trying to figure out their identity. I think his are a bit more pronounced than others, because I think his background is a bit more complicated.
Just like, because a very similar background to Obama. But could it not be that you have somebody here who has gone through that and who has reached a point, who has said, this is who I am, this is what I want.
Let me tell you why I don't buy it. Because anything that I reach some conclusion, and this is me and he ain't me, but trust me, I can stand up and verbalize it and explain it. I don't hide behind Twitter. I don't hide behind private conversations with Roland Martin or whoever else. I come out and stand on it and defend it.
But Jason, that's you.
I get it.
But also, you don't vote. And you said, that's me. And so, here's the deal. It's interesting to me that you want to give space to say, this is me, this is who I am, but you don't want to give space to him.
Roland, if you have some opinion about me not voting, or me overeating, or me about anything, you have a right to that opinion. I'm not going to go lay down and cry, oh my God, Roland.
But Jason, that's a different...
I'm a public figure. I can have opinion. He's a public figure who took a highly polarizing position. He stood out there like he was man enough to deal with whatever came with him. This
goes beyond the position. I'm asking a very specific question for a reason. And that is, when you opine, when you say that, again, you paint this picture that, y'all, this is nothing but a confused, biracial, he don't know what he's doing, he's crazy, he just, it's all of that. That's how it comes off.
Do you know how many athletes, NFL athletes, that have told me that in private? Most of them. And so I'm not out here on some island all by myself. And there's most rational people can see it and express it privately. I just happen to say it publicly. He's a public figure that took one of the most polarizing positions in the history of sports. And so with that comes along some pushback and some people questioning your motives. When Muhammad Ali changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, joined the Nation of Islam, said I'm not going to get in the NFL or in the military draft, that's a strong polarization. And you know what he came out and did? He stood on it,
and you know what's interesting?
And people said all kinds of things about Muhammad Ali and questioned his motives and said, hey, he's just addicted to this religious sect.
And here's what I've learned.
That's what people do.
And here's what I've learned. What I've learned is when we want to, it's very convenient when we want to compare a Kaepernick to Ali because you want him to speak out. But then you take offense when others compare Kaepernick to Ali. You're literally bolstering your point of view by using Ali versus Kaepernick. Yet when others, because you said it earlier in terms of, people want to see him as baby Malcolm X or Muhammad Ali, you are using Ali to justify your argument, but when somebody else uses Ali just for the argument about Kaepernick, you say they're wrong.
Roland, I'm saying he's not Muhammad Ali because he won't stand out here and defend his position.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
And what I'm saying is, what it also gives off to people is that you have a personal animus against Kaepernick. And what I'm saying is, it may be that there are people, and what I do, I've met people. I've met individuals who, I just finished interviewing the Reverend Dr. James Lawson, one of the greatest organizers we've known, turned 90 years old last month. If you ask the average person, James Lawson, they'd be like, I don't know who you're talking about. But you know what? Lawson, Nashville movement. You know what Lawson said? Lawson said, Roland, one of my last images of Dr. King, he's on the front row of the church, and he says, I was on the back row. There are some people that some will be loud and outspoken, others will lead quietly. There are different modes of leading. And so I don't necessarily think a person has to always hold news conferences, do sit-down interviews, and be out there chanting, talking, because some people actually want to lead with their actions as opposed to just talking. And there are others who just talk who don't have any action to back it up.
I got it, Roland. But as a broadcaster and a critic, I have a right. It's America.
No, I understand.
freedom of speech.
Of course.
To say, I don't like this or respect it. It makes me think he doesn't really believe it. It's just something he's doing.
Which also I think doesn't give enough space to their people who actually, that's how they present themselves.
Doesn't give enough. That's your opinion. I don't have a problem.
No,
with
actually, it's not just my opinion. I'm actually basing it on people who actually have
okay,
done
but
it.
that's your opinion. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
offended
what
by
that's what
your
it is.
opinion. Why
That's
are you
what-
offended by mine?
No, what I'm offended by is when we present this view that somehow
A
he's
view
bad-
that disagrees with you
no,
is somehow bad.
not disagreeing. That somehow he's bad, he's wrong, and what you send off is there's a personal animus against him.
I don't
Reading
have
your
a personal
tweets,
animus
reading your
against
tweets.
I'm a critic.
No. But Jason, Jason, I've been doing media since I was 14 years old.
Got it, Roland. You're
No. What I'm saying is,
are Walter Cronkite.
no. Actually, I'm not Walter Cronkite. I'm Roland Martin. So I'm making the point that I get being a critic, but it comes off as different. It's more personal.
Check. There's a guy named Carl Peterson in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
General manager of
On
the
the
Kansas
business
City
side.
Chiefs. He was the general manager, president of the Kansas City Chiefs. I used to light him up every day in the Kansas City Star. Every day. Made my name. Criticizing Kansas City Chiefs. His running of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he used to, I think it's personal. I think it's personal. No, it's just my job. This is how I do it. And Carl Peterson, some white dude, again, sledgehammer, almost every day. You can go ask anybody in Kansas City. I'm a critic. If I disagree with someone, I express it.
Should Colin Kaepernick be back in the NFL?
Should he be back in
Yeah.
there? Life's not about should.
Okay, when you look at Nathan Peterman, who's thrown 82 career passes and 10 interceptions, do you believe that Colin Kaepernick has a skill set to be an NFL player?
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick has enough talent to play in the NFL.
Do you believe that?
And he's become such a polarizing deal because the NFL role at the end, it's just a TV show, man. That's all it is. And the NFL is going to do what's best for television ratings. And if they think Colin Kaepernick's bad for NFL ratings, they're not going to hire him. He's just an actor in a TV show.
What I also understand is that they also like winning, and that is this here.
Roland, he didn't win in San Francisco, so don't have that.
He did win in San Francisco. Then, of course, we hit that last season. But let's also keep in mind, the whole team sucked. Remember, it was 2-14. The whole team sucked.
It's a TV show.
Right, I got you. But the offensive line, the
script.
defensive line, linebackers, the whole team sucked. You will admit that, right?
I got it. Roland.
Gotcha. No, I'm just saying, but the whole team did suck.
I got it. I'm not going to do your deal and lay out my credentials as a sports.
No, I'm not laying out the credentials.
No,
I'm just saying if you went
2-14,
2-14, the whole team sucked, not just him. Not just him.
But again, Kaepernick doesn't show up and wins follow him. Not particularly at 30 when he's been out of the league for a couple of years. I don't know if he makes a difference in terms of anybody winning or losing games. And so, is he good enough?
Only way we'll know that if he actually gets a shot.
Is he good enough to be in the NFL talent-wise? Yes. He's created such a distraction around himself, and he's created the belief among NFL ownership that he's bad for ratings, and they're running a television show that's about ratings. Actors get written out of plots all the time.
But when Eric Reed came back and took the knee, you still have Kenny Stills and some other different players. The reality is, I think the difference here is that you still have other players who still are protesting. I think in this case, they're saying, no, we're going to make an example out of this one because he actually, for them, started this.
Well, it's more complicated than that.
When
Colin Kaepernick shows up on any team, there's an instant conversation about should he be your starting quarterback. And most of the NFL has him pegged as a backup quarterback. And they don't want a backup quarterback who instantly starts a conversation about whether he should be starting.
Well, I tell you right now,
coaches that don't want that distraction and that hassle.
I tell you right, there's some teams out there that I see them who are just terrible with quarterbacks,
Roland,
especially in Buffalo.
You push me there. You don't know that much about football, Roland.
Yeah.
Not much at all.
Actually, I can watch. Actually, I know enough to know if I see a quarterback who's horrible. And look, I had to sit through Brock Osweiler with the Houston Texans.
You don't know
Lord Jesus. Actually,
like the overwhelming majority of people in America, they don't know much about football.
Well, I know enough about football to know when I see a bad quarterback versus somebody who actually has succeeded before.
But the decisions are just more complicated.
No, I understand that. But don't act as if I don't know the difference between a bad quarterback and a quarterback who can win.
What goes into decision making about quarterbacks? It's
really
more complicated than just bad or good.
So I've never talked to general managers or
Roland.
Okay. All right. I'm just saying that.
Shit, I've talked to bankers. And I don't know nothing about bankers. I've talked to the guy that runs the concierge desk. I can't be a concierge. I get it. You talk to somebody.
No, not just talk to them, but also but you talk about a lot of stuff that you also don't have a background with. All right, Jason. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how this thing plays out, and also we'll see what happens with these players. And I think these players are going to surprise you in terms of those who are very much engaged in things they're doing in the community. And I give them a hell of a lot more credit, I think, than you do.
I think players have been involved in their communities and doing community work, particularly in the NFL, for decades. I've covered the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL for years. Player involvement in their communities and community work has been going on for decades. Right now there's a lot of media attention on it, and it seems brand new to everybody else, but it's been going on for years.
Yeah. Well, it was brand new because most people don't pay attention. But again, I think this generation of athletes, when the record is told, which actually is not always told in the present, people are going to realize the things that they have been involved in and have done that actually is advancing and paving the way for the next generation of athletes, which I think is totally different than before.
We'll see.
And that's the point of history. All right?
Hey.
Appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks, that is it. We appreciate all of y'all watching. We'll look for your comments as well. And I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be at the Young Turks studio tomorrow. I'll be joining Yank Dugan and those guys on the Young Turks. So look forward to having that. I'm here. Look forward to having that conversation with Yank. We'll be live at the Young Turks at our regular time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. And, of course, you can catch me right after I'm done with the Young Turks at 4 p.m. as well. And don't forget, we're also going to be going in and out live streaming from A Taste of Soul on Saturday here in Los Angeles. 350,000 people will be at Taste of Soul on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we'll certainly look forward to you joining us this weekend as we live stream for that as well. I look forward to reading your comments. Don't forget you can support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join our Bring the Funk fan club. These type of conversations, we're going to have more of these. As I told you, I was here in LA 2 weeks ago. Amazing conversations I had with Chuck D, Erica Ash, Erica Alexander, Devon Franklin, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Lisa Ray, Reverend James Lawson. This is the kind of discussions we need to have, not just the short, quick sound bites. And of course, this is what you're not getting on black networks out there and a lot of these different black websites. And so we want to offer you something that's totally different than what you're seeing on a regular basis. And so let me check to see, because I want to see, do I have to wear my clothes tomorrow? My Astros were down 4-0. Let's see where we stand right now. Okay. Boston, they beat my Astros. Dadgummit. So the season's over for my Astros. But the Lakers play the Rockets Saturday here in LA. Yes, I'll be there to see us beat LeBron James. Y'all take care. I got to go. Holla!